Ladies and gentlemen, we are witnessing a breaking headline moment in women's professional basketball that is sending shockwaves through the entire sports world right now. A prominent WNBA player has just publicly pointed fingers at content creators and members of the media, claiming they are directly responsible for the catastrophic failure of the league's collective bargaining agreement negotiations. Yes, you heard that correctly. Instead of addressing the internal disputes and financial gridlock among veteran players and team owners, a WNBA star is now shifting blame onto YouTubers, podcasters, and sports commentators for the complete breakdown of what should have been a straightforward labor deal. Skylar Diggins-Smith, one of the league's most recognized athletes, sat down with WNBA legend Lisa Leslie in an explosive interview on the Just Women's Sports YouTube channel, where she laid out her reasoning for why the CBA remains unsigned and unfinished. This is not about injuries. This is not about schedule conflicts. This is about money, power, and who controls the narrative in women's basketball. And according to Diggins-Smith, content creators are sabotaging the entire process. This story is unraveling fast, and what we're about to reveal exposes deep fractures inside the WNBA that the league has desperately tried to keep behind closed doors. Let's be absolutely clear about what is happening here. The WNBA and its players' union have been locked in intense negotiations over a new collective bargaining agreement, a deal that determines player salaries, benefits, working conditions, revenue sharing, and the financial future of every single woman who steps onto that court. These negotiations have dragged on for months, and despite the league experiencing record viewership, sold-out arenas, and unprecedented media attention, the players and the owners cannot come to an agreement. The core issue is money. Veteran players want significantly higher salaries. They want better travel accommodations. They want larger revenue shares. They want the WNBA to treat them like the professional athletes they are. And on the surface, these demands seem reasonable. The league is growing, sponsors are pouring in, television deals are expanding. So why can't they get a deal done?
To the OGs.
Okay.
Like, it's just no doubt. I know I'm one of the last of a dying breed.
Yes.
I'll just say that when it comes to those things. We put ourselves out there, and we knew that, you did something, and, it was a certain level of decorum. It's a certain standard, a certain way that you approach, people that came before you. When I came into the W, it was in a very fragile place. You pay homage to whoever it was that had been there before you and been doing the thing, no matter how many points they average, what school they went to. It's just a certain level of way that we carried ourselves around the OGs, where we didn't fear anybody, but we respected everybody. And it was a certain posture about that, how we talk to you, how we ask you questions, how we look at you and treat you. And not to say it was anything of a, like we are bowing down or anything like that. I think it was just a certain way you carried yourself around the OGs, and that's just what it is. That's still how it is for me to this day. How I greet you guys and how I talk to you guys, how I talk about you guys, how I act when I'm around you guys, because it's a certain level of respect that I think is warranted there, that you earn, that I'm going to be like that regardless if we're competitors or whatever space that we're in. And that's just evergreen to me. Also, it was thicker skin when I came into the league. They would tell me downright, you ain't getting shit tonight. I remember P and, a player sitting on the stanchion when you warming up, and they be like, I don't know why you warming up and doing that. You ain't getting none of that tonight.
Right.
It was just like they came at you, they said what they had to say, but we kept it respectable as far as, we kept it within the lines and stuff like that. But yeah, people is gonna say stuff to you, people are gonna check you, you're gonna be criticized. And, that's just what it was. But I think it was a certain level of respect that we all, have for each other. That I think it does exist now with some of the younger players. And I just think it's other it's platforms now, it's opportunity now that didn't exist when we first came in the league. It's ways to build, grow, establish your brand, that really wasn't afforded to some of us when it first started, and definitely not some of the OGs, that came before us. And so it's more opportunity, more investment. We're just in a different situation positionally where our sport is, where a lot of people can do other things, and it does make you maybe smell.
Why is y'all in this position to do other things? Why? Who put y'all in this position to where people would even want to hear about the other things y'all doing? Because you have yet to share light on these younger players coming into this league with their already fan base that boosted up the notoriety and give y'all an opportunity to share some of y'all other thoughts and do other things. Why is that? Huh? Tell the truth.
Yourself a little bit, maybe they feel that attention and it's so tangible now. When we first got in the league, when you guys were in the league too, it wasn't all the direct connection with the fans, like social media wasn't very prominent until I first got in the league, where you can just, grow your brand directly, showcase yourself on these platforms like you could now. And so it does give you a more direct connection to the fans to be able to compliment you, to big up you, whatever the case may be, to ridicule, to talk crazy, whatever the case may be. But I do think, it's a certain new age swag that I kind of like, and but it's something that I'll always respect about, coming up under the OGs like you guys, the C-Robs and Bridget and Teaspoon and Taj and those Panette Pearson and those OGs that, I grew up around, that kind of taught you how to be in this league, how to have a posture for a rougher WNBA than what it was. When we would stand at the Westons and we had roommates and we had check bounces and we had all these things that the players could never imagine, having to deal with now. And so I think the times has definitely changed, and I think I'm always going to identify more, with the OGs.
Yeah, for sure. We like having you. I always say you're one of us too, so.
Right.
Okay, I want to ask you about the media coverage.
Gets complicated. WNBA team owners have reportedly told the players that they are willing to increase salaries, but there's a catch. The salary cap structure means that if veteran stars want maximum contracts, other players will have to take pay cuts. It's a zero-sum game right now. Someone has to sacrifice for someone else to win. And this is where the veteran players are being accused of looking greedy. They want their money, but they don't want to be the ones making concessions. They don't want to restructure deals. They don't want to take smaller contracts so that role players and younger talent can be paid fairly. They want the owners to simply open up the vault and pay everyone more. But the financial reality of the WNBA does not currently support that model. The league, despite its growth, is still not profitable in the way the NBA is. Revenue streams are improving, but they are not exploding. And this is the tension that is tearing the CBA negotiations apart from the inside. But instead of veteran players taking accountability for the stalemate, instead of acknowledging that their financial demands might be part of the problem, Skylar Diggins-Smith has now publicly blamed content creators. She claims that YouTubers, podcasters, and independent sports analysts are using clickbait, sensational headlines, and misleading narratives to distort what is really happening in the CBA talks. She suggests that these creators are inflaming tensions, turning fans against players, and making it harder for the union and the league to negotiate in good faith. She argues that the constant commentary, the hot takes, the viral clips, and the social media discourse are poisoning the well and making it nearly impossible for the two sides to find common ground.
Both sides of this game, as a player and then maybe someone as in sports media, the media around women's basketball has grown so much, but at times the coverage can feel a little click-driven or focused on the wrong things. What responsibilities maybe do you think the media members have in shaping the conversations around sports, and where do you think that they could do better or we could do better, or even as women?
Obviously, I think it's really important, when you have a platform, that you're on, especially as women, as women of color, the representation. I do think it is a certain responsibility that you have to make sure.
Why does the first thing you say, women of color? This has nothing to do with race. This has everything to do with coverage of women's basketball as a whole. This has nothing to do with race. That right there let me know she finna say something very, very bad. Let's listen, bro. Oh my God. Oh my God. Let's listen right now.
Or that we aren't perpetuating any stereotypes, that we aren't seeing people as monoliths and anything less than human beings. I think you really have to, it's a certain responsibility that comes, with these platforms when we're talking to people and trying to create these safe spaces and trying to create, conversation and really drive conversation on very meaningful topics. I think it's really important how delicate you handle those situations. And it is a responsibility to make sure, we aren't perpetuating any stereotypes or, anything that disparage women in general, which is like quite the opposite of, why a lot of these spaces are supposed to exist. And I do agree with you that a lot of things are clickbaity. And so I think just having that integrity when you are on a platform to make sure how you speak about people.
So it's clickbaiting because y'all can't get a deal done. That's clickbaiting. How about y'all clickbaiting us because y'all keep saying we're that much closer, everybody in, then kind of find out everybody's
the messages that you're getting across, are human being based, and not necessarily just a space where you're trying to break down anybody, tear anybody down, show any type of schadenfreude, or harp on anybody's situation just for clicks or likes or comments. I think the engagement needs to be genuine. And I do think we have a responsibility, all of us in the media, but especially as women of color, having a platform to make sure that it's used for what it's created for, and as a highlight, things going on, conversations, anecdotes, and spreading positivity and messaging. And so I think you're right about that, Lisa. And I appreciate the ones that do it like you, that use these platforms to uplift, and not necessarily looking for gotcha moments or to tear women and or people down in general.
Yeah, thank you for that, because I do appreciate that. I am very aware. I think it's very important. We have enough with this social media, as you talked about. Social media can be a beast. We don't need to add to that. We are truth tellers, and it's just, I think, a way that you tell the truth without making people tearing a person down. And I do love the word that you use. It's a responsibility, because we have a responsibility to, yes, we're telling stories. And I think storytelling is so important in our industry, because a lot of times people don't know our whole story. They can be like, oh, I was always a fan of Skylar, but I didn't think about the fact that she have 2 kids every day, that she's coming out here doing what she's doing and killing, you know what I mean? And I think those are the things that I love to tell and kind of peeling back some layers, but 100%, there is no reason, and I would never want to be
around. Let's break down what she's really saying here. Skylar Diggins-Smith is essentially arguing that independent media voices, people who are not controlled by the WNBA's public relations machine, are damaging the league's image and complicating labor negotiations by telling the truth. Because here's the reality. Content creators are not making things up. They are reacting to what the players themselves are saying in interviews. They are analyzing the financial reports that are publicly available. They are asking the hard questions that mainstream sports media often refuses to ask. Questions like, why are veteran players holding up a deal that could benefit the entire league? Why are some players prioritizing personal paydays over long-term growth? Why is the players' union not being transparent about what they are actually demanding? These are legitimate questions, and content creators are asking them because fans want answers. But there's another layer to this story that cannot be ignored. Skylar Diggins-Smith and other WNBA players are frustrated because independent content creators are getting more views, more engagement, and more influence than the league's official channels. A YouTuber breaking down CBA drama can pull hundreds of thousands of views. A podcast discussing WNBA financial struggles can trend on social media. Meanwhile, official WNBA content often struggles to reach the same audience. And this power shift is making players uncomfortable. They are used to controlling their own narratives through friendly interviews with established media outlets. But now, independent creators are holding them accountable, fact-checking their statements, and calling out contradictions. And that accountability is being labeled as clickbait and distortion. Let's talk about the greed factor, because this is where public perception is turning against the players. Fans understand that WNBA athletes deserve to be paid more. They work just as hard as male athletes. They train year-round. They sacrifice their bodies for the game. But when veteran players are demanding maximum salaries while simultaneously refusing to restructure deals so that younger players can earn livable wages, it starts to look selfish. When players are blaming content creators instead of addressing the real financial disagreements at the negotiating table, it starts to look like deflection. When the league is offering solutions, even imperfect ones, and the players' union keeps rejecting them without counter-proposals, it starts to look like obstruction. And here's the kicker. The WNBA owners have made it clear that they are willing to increase overall player compensation, but the structure has to be sustainable. They cannot pay WNBA players NBA-level salaries when WNBA revenue is a fraction of NBA revenue. That is not greed, that is economics. The league loses money almost every year. It is subsidized by the NBA. If the players push too hard and demand too much too fast, they risk destabilizing the entire league. They risk teams folding. They risk the WNBA contracting instead of expanding. And yet, some veteran players are willing to gamble with the league's future because they want their payday now. Skylar Diggins-Smith's interview with Lisa Leslie was supposed to clarify the player's position. It was supposed to generate sympathy and support. But instead, it revealed how disconnected some players are from the reality of their own league's financial situation. It revealed that they would rather blame YouTubers and podcasters than admit that their own union is divided, that veteran players and younger players have conflicting interests, and that the failure to reach a CBA deal is not because of media narratives, but because of internal dysfunction. Content creators are not the enemy here. They are simply shining a light on what is really happening. They are giving fans the full story, not the sanitized version that the league's PR team wants you to hear. And if that makes players uncomfortable, if that makes them feel like they are being unfairly criticized, then maybe they should reconsider their strategy. Maybe they should stop pointing fingers at the people holding the camera and start looking in the mirror. This entire situation is about to get worse before it gets better. The longer the CBA remains unsigned, the more unstable the league becomes. Free agency is in limbo. Trades are frozen. Players don't know what their contracts will look like next season. Teams don't know how to plan their rosters. And fans are losing patience. The goodwill that the WNBA built over the past few years is evaporating because the people who are supposed to be leading the league forward are too busy fighting over money and blaming the media for their own failures. And let's be absolutely clear about one more thing. Content creators are not trying to destroy the WNBA. Most of them want the league to succeed. They want women's basketball to thrive, but they also want honesty. They want accountability. They want the players to stop pretending that they are victims when they are the ones refusing to compromise. They want the league to admit that financial sustainability matters just as much as player empowerment. They want a CBA deal that actually works for everyone, not just the veteran stars who already have endorsement deals and overseas contracts. So where does this leave us? The WNBA is at a crossroads. The players' union and the league have to decide if they want to move forward together or if they want to keep fighting until the whole thing collapses. Veteran players have to decide if they are willing to make short-term sacrifices for long-term growth. And content creators are going to keep doing what they do best, asking tough questions, demanding transparency, and giving fans the real story, no matter how uncomfortable it makes people like Skylar Diggins-Smith. This is not going away. The pressure is mounting, the clock is ticking, and the world is watching.